I don't know why, but I really want to go. At last, my love. I don't even know what the does this. I don't know why I want to sing that every time I hear that chord. But hi everyone, welcome to Talks with T. So I feel like Carson is going to love this episode because he really likes when I talk about my life. Because there's always something. So anyways, I just wanted to hop on here and share my week, share my life, share my talks with T, because there's always something with T. T Money's always, but ironically, as much as, I don't want to use the word ironically, but like, you know, as much as he likes those, there's a motivational story and inspirational like quote and like lesson through this entire podcast. So I'm going to take you guys on an adventure with this story. So I got some interesting news this week, but God is good. And again, I think that I just want to preface this like, Teona 3 years ago would have been like everything would it like I am a very emotional person, very passionate. I'd like to use that word. So like, and I used to have like a very short temper or like a very short, like I would just like freak out. Like, so now I'm just like, all right, God is in control. Whatever is supposed to happen will happen. So this week's just been a lot, like with the terms of just like moving in, a lot of things with work. And so it's just been very like nonstop. And like, there's always this balance that I find myself with like the things that I am working towards. And then also just like, you know, work that is something that I'm like, I love, and balancing all those things at once. And so 2024 has been a year that I was just explaining that I don't remember having a horrible year, if that makes sense. Like there's people that are like, that was the worst year of my life. Like I don't really till this year, like till 2024. However, 2024 was also an amazing year because there was a lot of blessings and trials and all this stuff. And I sit there and I'm like, I don't want to say it's the worst year of my life. Granted, I'm only 23 years old. I got praying that I got more years to come, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't remember though a year that really I sat there and was like, this is the worst year of my life. Like 2024, I guess, takes that reign, but it's like not the worst. It's not the best. It's just like never ending. There's always freaking something. And so as of, you know, we went through a huge change. I moved cross country. So we're dealing with that. We're dealing with like changes in work and the goals that we're striving for, like the projects that we're doing, like me and Carson, then, you know, breakups, my car getting robbed, like stolen. And now from this week, more news. So I'm going to just like start from the beginning. So if you have not noticed, I'm very pale skin and very fair. And I have a lot of beauty marks and, you know, freckles. And so my whole life, like, I literally have never gotten like skin checked. And so I just want you guys to know when I speak this story, get your skin checked ASAP. And so I'm like a health freak. Like I am someone that's like, I'll have like something wrong and like I feel like a little pressure on something. I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying. Like, so I always like, I get every test that I need to do yearly, but I've never gotten a skin check. And so I've had this huge beauty mark, whatever, on my back. I've always had it. And so, I go to a chiropractor this year and I love her. That's my girl. Especially now after the story. And so I go to my chiropractor and she's doing my back and she goes, how long have you had that beauty mark? And I go, oh, I've had it literally like forever. Like I don't remember not having it. And she was like, I get that checked because someone in my family just found out they had skin cancer because like, they had a beauty mark their whole life. And I'm sitting there like, okay, no. Like I'm just like not phased. I go to my Shauna Higgins. I love you so much. It's my dermatologist. Check her out. Metropolis downtown. She was doing my microneedling. I went for an appointment, my last microneedling appointment. And I go, as she's doing it, I go, listen, like, I know, like, I didn't schedule, like, this is just like a microneedling session, but like, would you, it's like something in my gut was just like, tell her about that birthmark. So I was like, would you be able to check it? And she goes, yeah, like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, she's like, why are you like nervous all of a sudden? I'm like, oh, well, my chiropractor. And like, we're sitting there laughing because it's like now, like, it's fine. And she looks at it. I take my, like, I show her my back and she goes, oh, I don't like the color. And I'm like, and so I'm sitting there and she's like, I feel like it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. So like, fast forward now, I get a call on Thursday and it says, you have the biopsy came back as, you have skin cancer, you have melanoma, early stages of melanoma. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, do I cry? Like I asked her, I'm like, do I cry? Cause like my initial thing is like maybe to cry. And I'm like, I don't know what to, like, but here's the beauty and a thing. Like I'm so like literally God is good is they caught it in time. So so if I scared you right now with this, I think I scared a lot of people because I literally just texted people, I have skin cancer. Like my mom was about to get on the next flight to come here, but they found in the, like, so it was the beauty mark and then like, hit the mic, beauty mark. And then on top of the beauty mark, there was growing like a freckle. And like, that was where it was growing. And she was like, it's so early. It's just like on the surface of your skin, on your skin. It's not even inside of you yet. So like, all we have to do is now I have to go through a surgery where they cut 5 millimeters and like on my back to like make sure it never spreads. And that's the only thing. It'll leave a scar. But I sat there and I was like, like there's a lot of emotions because like what person likes to get a phone call and say you have cancer? Like no one likes to hear that. But I'm very thankful because it's not, I don't, hopefully. But it was one of those things where in my head, I was just like, yet another thing this year has brought, like yet another thing I have to now. Oh my God. Like, and I sat there and I was just like, this year it really made me reflect. Like, it's just never ending. Like this year is not the worst. I want to say it's the worst because I don't remember anything else, but like it could be worse. Like there could be so much worse that happens. And I just like, after that phone call, I really like a lot of emotions were processing through me. And like, I was sitting there and I was just like, God is so good because like really it could be worse. And that's when I say like, 4 years ago, I'd be just like a mess. I'd be like, but I just feel like one thing that I am very just like, first of all, I sit there and I'm like, you've changed my perspective on things. Like how I look at things has changed. And that's something I'm like learning to admire, I guess, like about myself is like, oh, like it could be worse. Like even when I was like talking to my mom, I was just like, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, like I cried, but I was like, I just can't fathom like, everything happens for a reason. It's just been never ending, but it's like, it could be worse. And then on top of that, I'm like, well, you just go through the motions of what you need to do. So like right now I'm like sitting there and I'm like, okay, well the next thing would be to remove this thing. There's no like, that is what's in my control. And I've literally like, I'm trying to segue into like the motivational side is like everything that you do is like, I really believe it's like you have to do what's in your control and then the rest is in God's hands. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I never understood it until like I started getting into these situations where I'm like, there's literally nothing I can do. Like I have to just like surrender that and just like literally just give it because at that point it's like, what can I do? Okay, I could do this. Now like anxious, Teona, because I really do know, I don't think I know. I have like anxiety, but not the anxiety that people talk, like my anxiety stems from like overthinking. And so like I could sit there and be like, oh, in 6 years I'll get the call. But then I realize I'm like, why am I going to sit there and be like worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet? And I see God really trying to like put that in my head and to like really instill that in me, is like, why am I worrying? Like, I'm only graced for today. So what can I do today? And then the rest will fall into place. And so that was what was crazy. It's just the fact that I hear this news and I'm like, oh, okay, what next? What now? What do I do now? This is what I do now. So Teona's gonna have a scar. And it's really, another thing is like, what's crazy is like, I'm pretty sure Khloe Kardashian had the exact same thing in her face. So I'm like, oh, I could have had it in my face. Cause I'm gonna tell you something right now. Like if I had it in my face, this would be a whole different ball game. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting, I don't do well with like blood or like the idea. I was like, whatever you have to do, just don't tell me what you're doing. Like I actually don't want to know. I had my mom is a registered nurse, one of the best nurses I know. And I had her like call because like, I don't want to know, like just tell her and like, that's fine. Like doesn't have to, but yeah. And then like, you know, when I was talking just now to one of my best friends, Allie, shout out to Alejandra. And I was explaining this to her, the topic of like, this has to be like the most worst years of my, like our lives. And I said, I was like, you know, it's interesting because I just still think of like what God has done. And like, I sit there and I'm like, yeah, like it's been a hell of a year. Like this year literally has just been never ending. And there's a lot of change and a lot of things that just keep coming and dealing with and like emotions. And I'm like, but it's so funny because I'm like, I see the little things and like the small things and like the blessings within. That's why I said like, I can't really say this is the worst year of my life because there's so much that this year has given me that is so amazing. Friends, family, opportunities, like, oh, like, and I sit there and I'm like, it's just crazy how even in the worst times, like God will still show you the good things. Like there's so much good things. And I'm like, all right, like it's just going to happen. Things are like going through the motions. And it's interesting because another thing that I realized that it changes, like the desire to want to know, I don't want to know anymore. My whole life, I had a fear of the unknown. Like I literally love the ocean, but the idea of like, when I can't see my feet, that's when I start to freak out. Like if you put me in the middle of the ocean, I have to fix my feet because honestly, this is like hurting me. When I started to, little technical difficulties. I was gonna say something, but I think it's not a funny joke. So Carson, I think if you are listening, you'd know what I would say. No. I'm good. I just think if Carson overheard me what I was saying, like about to say, he'd be like, oh, I used to make a lot of dad jokes. Now it's other things. But back to what I was saying. So like I had this idea of like the unknown always scared me. It was like one of those things that I needed to know. I needed to know everything. Like if we stop being friends, I like need to know why. If you did me wrong, I need to know why. Like I always wanted to know why. I wouldn't stop until I found out. Like I needed to know. And so another thing that I've noticed in this year is like I don't want to know. Or like, I don't even know if it's I don't want to know. I just don't care enough to know now at this point where it's like, okay, well, God's going to do what he's going to do. So like at this point in my life, like I'm just going to trust that. I'm going to trust there's that it's going to work it's going to just work out whatever way it's going to work out. And that is like crazy for me because that's something that I've grasped for so long, especially if you're a control freak like me. Like I control like a lot of things. I want to control things. It's hard when like, you know, now I'm noticing where I'm like, I'm still a control freak in some areas of my life, but like, I just stopped wanting to understand why things happen because some things just freaking happen. Why did this person say this to me? Why did this person act this way? It just, the shit happens. Like, that was what I'm noticing in this year as well, is like the things that I so desperately wanted to understand, or that like 3 years ago, I don't really give a shit now. Like, I'm just like, okay, it's another thing and it happened and life keeps going. Like, I've said this before, like life doesn't just stop because you're going through a bad time. So you need to do the things that you have to do to like continue on, and everything else is going to fall into place. And I can't stress that enough, of like when that, honestly, that piece comes out of the idea of like, okay, I don't need to know, it's going to happen. And that, like, the control of like understanding why friendships were ending, or understanding why this person did this, and then even like, why is this happening? I stopped wanting to care. Like, I stopped wanting to understand that. And I think that's a blessing. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I really think like come New Year's Day, I can't wait for 2025, but come like New Year's Eve, like I'm going to sit there and reflect. I'm going to reflect on this year, because I'm already reflecting on this year of what it's taught me, the things that have happened. And there is a lot of change within myself that I see, that I'm like, I wouldn't have reacted that way 3 years ago, or I wouldn't have thought that way. I wouldn't have done this. And I'm just like, wow, like it's, because I don't remember when I just like light bulb, that's when it happened. Like, it just like slowly started to transition to the point where I'm at now, where I'm like, oh, well, I react that way now, or I've done that. And it's crazy. Even when I got my car stolen, I was talking to someone about it, and I was like, well, my mind shifted to the fact where I'm like, you have to really be at a certain point of your a certain point of your life where you think it's okay to just like bash someone's car window and steal whatever. And I'm like, well, God will, like, I don't have to control, because it like 4 years ago, I would have been like, we need to find them. And I wouldn't have let it go. Like, because for the first couple, like the first 2 weeks, I was like, I could have done this. I could have done this. I could have done this. And now I'm like, well, it happened. And like, you just move forward, and you just got to keep going. And you like, that really would have been how I reacted. And I'm proud of myself in that sense, because I'm like, wow, that's growth. And so one thing I urge a lot of people, because I have a lot of people that right now, 2024 is a fucking crazy, I'm like cursing a lot, is a freaking crazy like year for them. And I'm like, I don't know, I think it's because I was doing it within myself. I was like, well, reflect on what has happened in this year. Like, just reflect. Always take the time to reflect, because you really need to understand where you came from. And like the most smallest thing is like the biggest thing. I mean, I don't know why this just came up. I think it's because I'm staring at it, but we just moved into a new apartment, and we just got like a balcony set, like from Facebook Marketplace. Love that place. That's like my new best friend now. But like, it's so simple how you just put these freaking chairs on the balcony, but it like changed my entire mood, where I'm like, oh my God, it's like, I'm like a crackhead on it. Like, I'm like, this is I could like, I was crying, like the sunset, the freaking chairs, the table, like this ain't like made out of gold. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God. Like, the same thing goes to like the most smallest thing. You got to give yourself credit. You got to take time to really applaud yourself from where you've come. Because it's not like, life is not just like the highs. There's the lows, and there's like the steadiness. And you have to say, as much as you're freaking, like, I sat there and I'm like, yet another thing that has to be added. But I'm like, there's so much goodness, even through the pain, even through the frustration, the annoyance, the nonstop. Like, there is something constantly being used. And I'm like, 4 years ago, I was praying to even get to this point in my life, and I'm there, and I'm like, God is still using that. It doesn't just like stop. And that's what this is why I said, like, my little story time of my week now turned into a motivational quote. I'm okay, guys. I will definitely keep you guys posted on that surgery. It's this week. If you're watching this, getting cut 5 millimeters this week. So, Carson doesn't want me to lift, which is so nice of him, but y'all, I'll be probably tweaking the fact that I can't do certain things. Like, I'll be like, I can't do that. I like to have a routine, and when that routine is like, but back to what I was saying, sorry guys, I don't have ADHD. have thoughts in my head. Um, so yeah, like like really honestly own who you are, what you're growing, because I think the craziest thing is because some people will look at it as like that's being cocky, or you're oh, okay, you're prideful or egoistic and blah blah blah. No, like I think people should applaud themselves for where they've come, where they've grown, where like if you see a growth in you, freaking own it. Like, why not? Like, that's the greatest thing. Cause even like I sit there and I'm like, I'm so proud of where I'm not where I want to be, but I'm proud of where I am right now and how far I've come. And that's the journey. I say it's never a destination, it's a journey. And so applaud yourself taking that time, and always, like, I think if there's one thing that I really could urge is like everything could always be worse. And unless it's at its worst, okay, then that's a different story. But like there's always worse that can happen. And I think that like we say it so many times, because that's another thing. I've heard this so many times. I'm like, it could be worse. It could be worse. It could be worse. And I was like, okay, well, screw you, Becky. Like, hey, this is worse. But now I'm at a point where I'm like, no, really, it could be worse. And I'm seeing just like, and maybe it's just because now I'm on my own in a sense. Like, you know, when you have like, I was living with my family and like I had like my mom and, you know, I would say my dad, but he left. But I had my grandma and I had like my brothers, and I know that if I call that, you know, these people are always going to be there for me. But there's a sense of like independence, like, cause I've always been independent my whole life, but there's this independent feeling of like, okay, now I'm really there. And now you start to really see the things that like, it's you and you're doing it. And it's like, wow, like, yeah, it could be worse. Like that really has hit me. And so I'm really thankful for you guys to watch Talks with T. If you're watching this, I love you. Thank you for hopping on. And yeah, I'll keep you guys posted. But there's one thing I want to end is like, honestly, reflect on where you've come from, like how far you've come. That just wasn't English, sorry. Reflect on how far you've come and really take in like the blessings and the trust. Because like when you start to really sit there and think about it, I promise you, you're like, wow, okay. Like, cause even at your lowest, like I know people that are like, even at your lowest, there's still things that God will use and do. And again, like I sit there, I'm like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, but there's a reason. I don't need to know it yet. And that's just all. You just keep going. Don't stop. It's like a race that never ends. And then the marathon, I'll tell you when that finish line comes, but do it. And so, yeah, thank you. My back will be scarred, but my love will never end, if that's a good one. Thank you for watching Talks with T.